Hello, and welcome to Professor Chandler's MLA tutorial. I'm going to be using an example of an essay that you may or may not actually be writing in this class, but that doesn't really matter because no matter what assignment it is for this course, we are going to be using MLA formatting style. So that will not change, no matter what type of assignment you are writing for this course. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do when you are writing an assignment that has to use MLA formatting is get started on your heading. So that goes at the top left corner of your paper, which I'm going to insert now. You'll notice that I already have general formatting set to this document, such as Times New Roman font, size 12-point font. I have my text aligned left, and I have 1-inch margins set for the entirety of the paper. So next I will do the heading. First thing you put in your heading is your full name. You press enter. Next you will have my name or the name of your professor. Just the last name is sufficient, but if you want to, the full name is fine as well. Next, you will have the full and correct course information, including section number for your course, whatever that might be. And then you will structure the date exactly as I have here. Notice that the date comes first, month next, and then the year. There are no commas, and the month is spelled out completely. You will not abbreviate the month, okay? Also notice the spacing. The spacing here is 2.0, as you will see, which is double spacing. The entirety of your text should also be double spacing. Let me show you what it looks like if it's not double spaced. This is single spaced. This is not what you should be using in your papers for MLA formatting. You should change the line spacing to 2.0, okay? Next, let's insert our page header. You can do this one of two ways. You can either double click very quickly in the top 1-inch margin of your paper, as I have just done here, and then go to the insert page number, format the page number to make sure that it starts at the number 1. It shows at the very first, it shows on your very first page, and it is aligned at the top of your page on the right side. Insert. Notice, however, though, or well, we'll get to that in a second. Let me show you the other way you can insert a page header. You can go to Insert in the toolbar, page number, okay, same thing. Top of page, right side, insert. However, notice that page number is not in Times New Roman. You might not be able to tell, but trust me, I do. You can see here that it's actually in Calibri font. This is just something that Word does for some reason. It will automatically format the font in Calibri instead of Times New Roman. So you have to tediously change it every time. Okay, so at the top right of your page in your header, you also need to put your last name. Again, notice that this is not in Times New Roman. So you'll just highlight all of that, change to Times New Roman. Make sure it's size 12-point, double click back into your body of your text, and you're good to go. So here is my title for this paper. You don't have to follow the same structure, but for the most part, the first portion of your title will be something different than the second portion of your title. I would just ask your instructor specifically how they would like you to format the title, but I know for my course in your final paper, I want the first part of your title to be something something short and something maybe clever. You know, but of course it still needs to be related to your topic. And then it's separated, the second part of your title is separated by a colon, okay? So this is a two-part title. The second part is usually longer, more serious, and just a more detailed description of what your paper is about to be about, okay? So that's typically how you will see titles done. Notice that I have capitalized every important word in this title, okay? So words like to or in or at, related words like that, you will not need to capitalize, okay? So let's move on to the body of the text. In the body of the text, whenever you cite any information that is not common knowledge, so this is information that cannot be found without being cited, anywhere. It's not information that can be assumed that most, if not every person will know. And so it's also anytime you build off of anybody's ideas that are not your own. If you're building off of any information that you received or retrieved from the internet or some other source, then that needs to be cited. And it needs to be cited in the text at the exact time that you reference that outside information, that outside source. So I'm just going to read through because I actually have the directions typed here in the body of my text. And so I'm just going to read through that and give maybe a little bit of explanation. If you use an in-text citation, such as a direct quotation or paraphrase, this also counts for summaries, then you will need to use a parenthetical in-text citation, which includes the author's last name and the page number. Here's an example. The first time you mention an author in your paper, you should use their full name, and then after that, you only have to use their last name, okay? Never refer to an author just by their first name. You are not on first name basis with these people. So Jeremy Adam Smith opens his article by telling a human interest story in order to appeal to his readers' emotions and demonstrate what fear and empathy of immigrants can look like in real life. And notice here that I don't have a direct quote, but I'm clearly summarizing the main idea of his article, Smith's article. So I have cited the page numbers that you can use to find where he talks about these points in his text right here, okay? And I'm summarizing a lot of information. It carries into 2 pages, which is why I have page 750-751. Notice that there is no word page or short, none of that is here, okay? You just need to put the page numbers. You don't need to put the word page in your in-text citation. Here's another example. The purpose of Our Fear of Immigrants. This is the title of the article that I'm using. It was written by Jeremy Adam Smith, okay? Just for your information, that's the example I chose to use for this tutorial today. So the purpose of Our Fear of Immigrants is to encourage readers to, quote, reduce the revulsion of immigrants and foster a stronger sense of empathy with newcomers. Notice here that I actually included Smith's last name, but I didn't in this previous example. The reason why is because I used his name in a signal phrase, so I didn't need to repeat it again here. But in this example, I did not use Smith's name at all, so I needed to definitely include it in my in-text citation. Also notice here I have these square looking brackets with these words inside of them. What that signals to the reader is the quote is obviously a direct quote. That's why it's in quotation marks, okay? Using quotation marks around direct quotations is an absolute must. Please do not forget to use your quotation marks and please format them properly, okay? So this is a direct quote, but I needed to insert these words of immigrants. I needed to insert that into this quote in order to make grammatical sense, in order to be clear in the way that I'm using it for my own essay. Because the original quote actually doesn't have that in this part of the sentence. I added that myself. And that is why it has these squared off brackets, because it was something that I needed to add to the quote for it to make sense. And you have to signal that by using these brackets whenever you have to change something in a direct quote for it to grammatically make sense or to be more clear for the way that you're using it in your paper. If you are citing multiple pages from a text at once, then you will need to indicate that in your parenthetical citation. Here's another example. So let's say you were quoting or summarizing something from pages 1 through 7, and then you jump to something in page 10. This is how you would cite that in your in-text citation. However, if you are citing from a source that lacks pagination, that means there are no page numbers, which is typical for a web page because there are no page numbers for a web page article, right? You're just scrolling up and down a web page. Then you will only reference the author's last name in the parenthetical citation. If there is no author listed, which sometimes happens for online articles, then you must use the title of the article itself in quotation marks in your in-text citation. And if the title is long, then you will shorten it appropriately. If you must directly quote something that is more than 4 lines, then you must format it as a block quote. So this is when you are directly quoting something that is really long, okay? It's more than 4 lines. Here's an example. You still need a signal phrase or a phrase that introduces the article, okay? You don't just start a block quote without introducing it. So here I'm going to introduce it. In the article, the authors describe, and then instead of having a comma before a direct quotation for a block quote, you will actually use a colon. And then you will format it as such. The way that I did this, here's the quote, okay? So this signals to your reader, hey, this is a direct quote, but it's really long, so I formatted it as a block quote. How I did this is I highlighted the text that includes just the direct quotation, and then I click on this little left indent tool and I bring it in to a 1/2 inch, and it perfectly formats just the quotation, this direct quote, as a block quote, and it doesn't mess with any of the rest of the format of my paper. Do not try to format a block quote by, one moment, by just pressing the indent key or tab key on your keyboard, okay? I know it looks nice now, but your formatting may not stay that way for the rest of your paper, okay? So I recommend just moving the left align into a 1/2 inch, okay? So here's the very long block quote. Also notice, this is something I haven't pointed out yet, the period signaling the end of the sentence is before the in-text citation here, and there is no period at the end of this in-text citation. That is how you format a block quote. However, when it's just a regular quote in your text, notice that there was never a period or a comma at the end of the sentence until after the in-text citation. This is how you will properly format your in-text citations as well. But as a general rule of thumb, you should try your best to avoid block quotes unless they are absolutely necessary. In some cases, readers just skim over direct quotations anyways and move directly towards the writer's synthesis and analysis. Also, if I notice that a student is including very long direct quotes as block quotes to either, or maybe both, just take up space in their paper so that they can meet the minimum page requirement, or at the expense of actually critically reading their text and taking the time to understand it in their own way and summarize it in their own words, that will be an issue. Please do not abuse the use of direct quotations at the expense of actually working with and understanding your outside resources and thinking critically about what they're saying and taking the extra step to summarize it in your own words. Additionally, do not ever commit what I call floating quotes. Here's an example. I open my quote here. Although the Patriot Act made it possible to deny asylum on the grounds of involvement in terrorism-related activities or association with a terrorist organization, the most far-reaching change in post-September 11 asylum policy resulted from the Real ID Act, end quote, and then I have my in-text citation. This is a floating quote because there is no introduction leading into this quote, and there's also no explanation at the very end of this quote. The sentence is entirely just a direct quote. Do not do this. This is a floating quote. It is floating because it has no introduction to hold it up and no evaluation to hold it down. Please practice the strategy that I use an acronym for called ICE. Okay, when you are directly quoting, summarizing, or paraphrasing somebody else's words or an outside resource, you need to introduce it, you need to cite it, and you need to explain it, okay? Always, always, always use the ICE acronym when you are using direct quotes, paraphrases, or quotations, okay? Also, you'll notice here that I have included this in-text citation in the middle of the sentence. That is because the original quote that I got this quote from, the original source, included this in the quote. This is a different type of citation style. Technically, you probably should not include that. It would just confuse me and make me think that you are not following proper APA citation style, because what that is, you'll notice it's in the middle of a sentence, which we never do in MLA citation style. The in-text quotation always goes at the very end of the sentence, never in the middle, okay? And secondly, you'll notice that this number, 2002, that's the year that the Doyle article published their article. We do not reference years in in-text citations in MLA citation style. That is APA citation style. MLA uses the author's last name and the page number. Do not include years in your in-text citation, okay? Finally, if you are citing a text which has more than 2 authors listed, use the phrase et al., which means and others in Latin, in both your in-text and works cited page citations. And if there are only 2 authors, then you will list them as I have here. The first person's last name, who is listed on the publication, the word and, do not use the ampersand symbol, use the actual word and then the second name. Notice there are no commas here, okay? No commas in your in-text citations. So here's an example of more than 2 authors listed. Do not list all of the authors. You don't have to do that. If there's more than 2, you can just use et al. According to the paratext, Smith is the author and/or editor of several blogs, popular magazine articles, 2 books, and some journal articles. Bullock et al., page 750. This tells me, okay, there are a lot of authors here, definitely more than 2, and the student does not need to list all of them. So this concludes my paper. Now I need to work on my works cited page. Some of you may be tempted to do this, to get to the works cited page, because it must be on a separate page from the rest of your text. You may want to just press enter, 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 enter over and over and over again until you get to a new page. Do not do this. It will mess up your formatting and it is inefficient. Just go to Insert, Page Break, and it will automatically format a new page here for you. Another thing you need to do is make sure that the title is centered. Okay, so we're going to click the Align Center button here, and your title needs to be Works Cited. Do not bold this, do not underline it, do not anything else to it, do not add a colon, do not add a hyphen. That is it, just Works Cited. It should not be bibliography, it should not be references, it should be Works Cited. Then you'll notice that all of these citations have what is called a hanging indent. The first line is all the way aligned to the left of the 1-inch margin, all the way aligned to the left on the 1-inch margin, sorry, and the The rest of the lines are indented at a 1/2 inch. There are 2 ways that you can do this. Highlight all of your citations, and again, I use the little tool on your ruler. If you can't see your ruler, by the way, you need to go to View and check the box that says Ruler. Okay, notice how that pops up. Then you can go to your top upside down triangle on the left margin, pull it out a 1/2 inch, but notice now that my citations are not within the 1 inch margin, so don't leave it this way. Now you click on the bottom rectangle piece of this left indentation tool and bring it back in, and it'll bring all of your text back into the 1 inch margin. Let's say you don't like that, then you can do it another way. So you can go to your line and paragraph spacing icon, click on line spacing options, and then you'll see in the indentation section, there's a drop-down menu for special, and you will choose hanging for special indentation by 0.5 inches. Click OK, and it will automatically do it for you. Okay, this actually also needs to be double spaced. Make sure that it is double spaced and not single spaced. Notice how much more difficult it is to read your citations if it's single spaced. Also, notice that none of my URLs are hyperlinked. That means the hyperlink has been removed. That means that the blue and underline, I know you all know what I'm talking about, but that has been removed, okay? Don't just change the font color and remove the underlining. Actually right-click on the hyperlink and click Remove Hyperlink, okay? Also, technically, you do not have to include the access date if there is a publication date already available. Okay, so for this citation, that doesn't need to be there, but notice in the second citation, there is no publication date here. Then you do need to have the access date here. Notice that the title of publications and journals and newspapers and websites are in italics. This is a must. And then titles of articles are in quotation marks. Again, this is a must. Okay, please, please, please be sure to include page numbers for any citation that actually has pagination. Notice that for the ebook, there are no page numbers included because there are no page numbers for an ebook. And if you want to automatically alphabetize your citations, you can highlight them and go to the top where the toolbars are. Click on the A to Z sort icon and make sure you click Ascending. Click OK, and it will automatically alphabetize your citations by last name. If there are no last names, then if there is no author, then it will just be alphabetized by the first word or first letter of the citation, which will, of the title of the article. Okay, I believe that about covers it. Notice that my works cited page is perfectly formatted on its own separate page. The page numbers are progressing with each page because they were properly inserted. All of my body paragraphs have been indented. The way that you can do that is just by pressing the tab key on your keyboard. That's the easiest, best way to do that. My heading is complete, and the entirety of my paper is properly formatted in MLA 8 citation style. That concludes the tutorial. Thank you, and I hope this was helpful.